From the time he cast off his shoes on holy ground and beheld the burning bush and asked, "What is this?" and was answered, "I am who I am." There has been no prophet like Moses to the whole world. And why is that? Moses seemed to identify several unique patterns of leadership and methodologies for designing group structures that even till the present, 3,000 years later, over the cycles of the Greek and the European and the American renaissances, political renaissances, none of them have touched the uniqueness which was expressed through the Mosaic model. And now, in the 21st century, more than ever before, maybe the Mosaic model of direct leadership, of direct representation, first of all individuals before God, but also in groups of 10, with justice available everywhere, and organizations of representation from elders, from people you know, from personal representation, and then on to larger groups until you got to the administration of the Great Assembly. The greatest challenge today in the 21st century, with the plethora of options and technologies, is the way we will lead ourselves. And the existing models which have been trialed are failing. There seems to be a failure of committees, of the methodologies in which committees work together, the blindness of the bureaucracy which calls out for a new system. And here, in this week's reading of the last reading of the book of Deuteronomy, Moses sums up his entire work. In it are laid bare the basic principles of a Mosaic vision for statehood. And this may be relevant 3,100 years later, more than ever before. And this is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. And he said, "From Sinai came and shined from Seir," which is from the east, "to them." This is an analogy to the sun coming from the east and going to the west. But in this case, it was not the sun which was rising, but rather it was the holiness, the hundreds of thousands of holiness from one side, from the right, and the fire from the left. And that was the children of Israel emerging as a nation from the desert. In verse 3 of Deuteronomy chapter 33, a curious poetic sentence is played, and it says, "Even the lovers of the nations, all the holiness of the nations are in your hands. V'hem tuku leraglecha, and they will sit down and be instructed by the rod at your feet. Yisa b'dvorecha, and they will carry your words." That from the time of an exodus from Sinai, rising up like the sun, but based on sentences, on just laws and recipes for a good life. It continues in verse 4. The Torah was given to us by Moshe. It was an inheritance of the community of Jacob. And there was justice and straightness. There was a king, and as he collected the leaders of all the people together, all the tribes of Israel, this vision that order can come from chaos and from a small algorithm of I am who I am, a algorithm of the past, the present, and the future, the inspiration of the word, of sentences, of creating, of imagination, the ability to take the divine idea and connect it deeply to the independence of humanity, to the freedom of humanity, to the exodus from Egypt, to resting, to a limitation of work. These great ideas in sentences would create and store a mass movement of hundreds of thousands from a desert, from the desolation of the desert, so that holiness, every nation would call it holy. And such is so about Moses and the work of Moses. And perhaps today, in the 21st century, one can inspire a new Mosaic attitude for the enhanced betterment of humanity, which is going through such travail and suffering, plagues of Egypt. And one of the great ideas of Moses was in sentences, that a verb, that just like God can be a future, a past, and a present, a verb can be conjugated, and a situation can be changed, and circumstances can be altered, and people can be moved from small to and excited to tens and hundreds of thousands. And the situation of crisis that we are in can be mended. There requires great vision. In great crisis, there is the opportunity, and the great test is what can be evinced from the Mosaic law, from the interpretations of our traditions to the situations today. And the Jewish people, in principle, are optimistic and draw inspiration to find the best way possible.